I'm Sharon Goldberg. I'm an internal medicine physician. I've practiced medicine for 21 years, and my background is mostly academic, internal medicine, hospital-based, clinical research, and medical education.
I'm a certified Microsoft small business specialist. I've worked on space station designing the cabling system for the airlock module, where I was responsible for EMI, EMC analysis, which is electromagnetic interference, electromagnetic compatibility.
I am a professor in the Department of Epidemiology, Biostatistics, and Occupational Health, and I teach there both toxicology and health effects of electromagnetic radiation.
My name is Daphne Tachover, and I'm the founder of an organization called We Are the Evidence. We are an organization that represents the many adults and unfortunately many children who have become very sick from wireless technology radiation.
There seems to be a couple false Easter eggs being put out there right now. I want to make sure we dispel that right off the gate.
The effects of wireless on health scientifically are very, very clear.
So it's always pushed back to the definition of an acceptable level of radiation. And that's what this is, by the way. This is about radiation.
Wireless radiation has biological effects, period.
My name is Dr. Angie Kolbeck. I've been reviewing the studies showing the impacts of wireless radiation on our health, and there are now thousands of studies showing the following adverse health impacts to wireless radiation: cancer, oxidative damage, DNA damage, DNA failure.
Things like memory, dizziness, anxiety, brain fog.
Headaches, nosebleeds, cognitive problem, exhaustion.
We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure.
Short and long-term memory loss, decreased attention spans, lower reaction times, even involuntary contractions of muscles causing misalignments of spines and jaws.
Breast cancer. We suddenly have breast cancer in women who have no DNA predisposition.
Disrupted immune function and change in stress proteins, reproductive and fertility effects.
There are dozens and dozens of studies that show beyond any doubt what this radiation is doing to our sperm. Now, if you take the cell phone out of your pocket, the sperm will recuperate within 3 to 4 months. What would not recuperate would be the damage to the DNA of the sperm. That is irreparable. The wife of the ex-governor of Indiana was diagnosed with glioblastoma. Same brain tumor Ted Kennedy had and John McCain had. Did you look at John McCain's scar? This is a cell phone brain tumor. LeBron James, one of our sports people, had a salivary gland tumor. That is another cell phone tumor. You didn't hear about it because immediately after that was discovered, he was paid by Samsung to become their spokesperson.
We are seeing increases in brain tumors. We're seeing increases in Alzheimer's. We're seeing increases in all of the neurotransmitter diseases, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's. These are all disease systems that are known to be associated with low-level energy exposures.
We talk about 24/7, around-the-clock exposure, wherever you are and your whole body. You never get away from it. And it seems from our studies that maybe your immune system can cope with for a time, but it will deteriorate. Then the irradiation will definitely damage cells at a deeper level, and the question is what will then happen?
These are out of peer-reviewed papers, so these are not just hypochondriacs thinking that they're doing it. We're having real problems with this.
This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. So 5G is not a conversation about whether or not these biological effects exist. They clearly do.
There is scientifically evidence that is so strong that you can be certain that the standards used by the SCC to manage health effects are wrong.
We need to start measuring how much radiation are people being exposed to before we roll out 5G. There are 4 kinds of electromagnetic fields that we know are harmful to human health. So radio frequency radiation, magnetic fields, dirty electricity, and electric fields, okay? Our exposure, any given person, and all humans are affected by EMFs. What is our exposure in a day? It's not one cell phone. It's cell phones, it's multiple wireless networks, it's smart meters, it's cell towers. It's this sandwich, and it all adds up.
The data we're going to look at are all published science, testing results, or public standards. At the bottom end of the radiation scale of what's called power density, or signal strength, is the minimum level at which cell phones will work, which was found to be 0.2 billionths of a microwatt per centimeter squared. Pine needles were found to age prematurely at 0.000027. At short-term exposures of 0.05, children aged 8 to 17 experienced headache, irritation, concentration difficulties, and behavioral problems. 0.1 is the biobiology or building biology guideline for extreme concern. 1.0 produced sperm DNA fragmentation and a decrease in sperm viability in vitro. Also at 1.0, the science shows the following bodily effects can occur: headaches, dizziness, fatigue, insomnia, chest pain, difficulty breathing, and indigestion. 2.5 saw altered calcium metabolism in heart muscle cells. 4.0, changes in the hippocampus affecting brain memory and learning. And at 6.0, DNA damage in cells. So, where are smart meters on this list? Electrical Power Institute in December 2010 measured a single Itron smart meter with pulses up to 7.93 microwatts per centimeter squared. Our own testing indicated approximately 8.0 with 1 meter. These tests are at a close distance, approximately 1 foot away from the meter, but an infant's crib could be just as close on the other side of the wall where the meter or bank of meters are installed. Even though there are all these known health effects at levels far lower, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg see fit to set the standard at 9.5. And China, Poland, and Russia, 10.0. This is the same level at which behavior has been altered, producing reflexes of avoidance following 30-minute exposures. A room of 12 smart meters, very common and even a conservative number in an apartment building, tested at 19.8 microwatts per centimeter squared. This is hundreds of times higher than levels which clearly indicate harmful effects. So, how can utilities and governments get away with forcing these devices on everyone? This is how. In Canada and the US and several other civilized countries, the safety limit is set at 600 to 1,000 microwatts per centimeter squared. This so-called safety limit is literally tens of thousands of times higher than levels which are known to damage health according to peer-reviewed published science.
The radio frequency radiation work that we did was supported by Motorola. The relationship was really very cordial and very stress-free, but only up until we started generating data. These folks were very, very upset and began to talk about how are they going to handle this, what sort of spin can we put on this, what can we expect from this, and from that point on the relationship changed. What we saw was that Motorola began to exert more and more control over the work, telling us what to do, telling us how to write abstracts, what to say in the abstracts, what to say in the papers, how to do the work. No, don't do this. Yes, do it this way. This was unacceptable. I had completed our study of DNA damage, and I submitted the final report to Motorola. They simply weren't willing to accept my interpretation of my study, my evaluation of my study, my knowledge of science at that point, and tried to urge me not to publish the study.
So in our first slides, what we see is normal cells, and the structure of the cells is intact and sound. This is what we would expect from a normal sample. So after 2 minutes of exposure in front of the smart meter at about 1 foot away, we see a totally different story. Sample 1, you can see a lot of degradation in the cells. The cell walls have been broken, and you see changes in the cells which are called mycoplasma. It shows a mutation to the cell. In the second sample, we see a different type of degradation to the cell membranes. You can see a corrugation here. This is called bottle cap formation, and it's known that this occurs due to oxidation or exposure to free radicals. So this third subject When we did her sample, she had to be pulled away from the meter after 45 seconds because she complained about an increasingly severe headache. And here you see a phenomenon called rouleau, where the red blood cells are stacking up, which makes it very difficult for the blood to deliver oxygen to the tissues as they would be their normal function. Every single one of these is a degradation. Every single one of these shows a trauma to the blood cells, and that came from something, and the only variable was the smart meter. The good news in all this is the patient and the blood can return to normal once they have been removed from the influences of these stressors.
A major U.S. government study on rats finds a link between cell phones and cancer.
Very first government study linking the radiation from cell phones to cancer.
2-decade, $30 million federal study out today found there is some evidence of a link between cell phone radiation and brain cancer.
Professor, what is the NDP? I've heard that study several times. NDP is what?
So it's a $25 million study on rats and mice that was supposed to demonstrate that there were no effects of radiation below thermal. And in fact, it demonstrated exactly the opposite. And it follows on the heels of two major studies on animals that said exactly the same thing.
And that study was designed perfectly to make sure that it cannot be challenged, that there will not be any doubt. That's why it took them 14 years. That's how they prevented discussion of health. And why do they want to prevent discussion of health if there's no problem with health?
I think anyone who puts Wi-Fi into a school should be locked up for the rest of their life. I really do. I think they're not fit to walk on the surface of this planet because they haven't looked at the research, and whatever incentive they have, it is not worth the genetic problems that parents are going to face with their children when they're born.
France has banned Wi-Fi in nursery schools and put warnings out for regular schools because they're finding there's impaired learning capacity in children when they're around Wi-Fi. And they have to put up warning signs where they put Wi-Fi transmitters.
The 4 top diseases that kill our children, our young adults right now, are brain tumors, thyroid cancer, testis cancer, rectal cancer, everywhere we put our cell phones. And a lot of our children are sick, and they're being misdiagnosed and mistreated because the wireless industry has put billions and billions of dollars in the past 30 years to mislead the public as to the health effects and keep the public uninformed.
The problem with 5G is that they're planning to put out tens of millions of these antennae all over the place without doing one single biological safety test.
Are you implying possibly that we, the consumers, are the guinea pigs since they haven't really done tests to see the effects in a smaller setting?
I mean, that's not an implication, it's a statement. We are, yes.
Cancer is not the main concern that I have. I'm really concerned about sperm count and about effects on pregnancy.
How many of you know that 1 in 6 American couples is unable to have a child when they want to? How many of you know that last year the birth rate in this country dropped the most that it ever has in recent history, 3% in a single year?
People look at the sperm, and people use cell phones, and the sperm, usually sperm swim, and they swim straight. But if you expose them to radio frequency, mobile phone waves, they swim in a circle.
Martin Paul says, putting tens of millions of 5G antennas without a single biological test of safety has to be about the stupidest idea anyone has had in the history of the world. So assessing all this, we have experts in various fields: military EMF weaponry, biological effects on humans, firefighters that are getting cognitive impairment by being there in them, countries that are banning these sort of technologies around schools because of the impairment to cognitive. Let's weigh that up in light of what Rudolf Steiner said in 1924 about just mere radio causing the impairment of cognitive functions on people, that they can receive news from around the world, but they can't understand it as well because of the effect of the electricity. we have to say, something smells sinister here.